anytime. Thing I love about these live streams is the sort of live engagement. So please bring your questions. I'm going to go ahead and bring up Brandon.
How's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I just got sucked into the comments. I wasn't expecting so much engagement already.
Yeah, and again, that's the fun. It's fun of doing these live. You never know what you're going to get. So yeah, let me know if you see anything you want to jump in on, and along the way answer. I'll pull them up, and we can kind of address questions. But before we even get going, man, hey, nice to meet you. Tell me, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. I always like to hear people's backstories and sort of what brings them to the trial space. I know, unlike a lot of my guests, you don't have a clinical trial background per se, it seems. So kind of interested what garnered your interest, and so if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, Brad, thank you for having me here. This is exciting. I haven't done a LinkedIn live stream yet, so this is a new experience for me here. So we'll see how everything goes. Nice. So my background, like you mentioned, I don't come from the clinical research side of the world. I very much come from the consumer internet space. So building and scaling platforms, businesses, products that look a lot like Thumbtack, consumer marketplaces, Airbnb, Zillow, these kinds of web-based products. Essentially, the way that you can think about it is websites that have helped real people navigate traditionally messy and opaque spaces in the real world. And hopefully that sounds just a little bit like research.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, unfortunately, that's something we lack a lot in the research industry. So that's I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and hopefully we can bring some of those learnings over here. So the journey to research is more personal, right? As I think a lot of folks have experienced. A handful of years ago, I had a close friend of mine diagnosed with a brain tumor at quite a young age, and she's doing just fine, luckily enough, because she was able to go onto clinicaltrials.gov and figure out the molasses over there and navigate her way into a clinical trial. She cold called her way in front of a PI to get herself an appointment to finally enroll. And actually, just a few months ago, that trial had a positive readout, which we were all kind of expecting based on how things were going for her. Anyways, watching her go through that journey helped me realize two things. The first is that she can't be the only patient who is out there trying to learn about clinical trials, trying to research clinical trials, because they have some sort of context or situation that is bringing them to research as a potential option. That was the first thing. And the second thing is just hearing about how all of that was happening for her. I realized, wow, some of the products, businesses, strategies that we had seen work in other spaces on the consumer internet side of the world could hopefully do a whole lot more good over here. So that's how we, tried to marry the two, right? Bringing some of this consumer marketplace background into the clinical trial space, and then hopefully do a whole lot more good for patients.
Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, clinicaltrials.gov is oftentimes sort of that maybe first public-facing thing. A lot of patients may come across, and I've even found myself, I'll get calls, and maybe there's trials we don't have available, but I ask someone to check out clinicaltrials.gov. But frankly, it's terrible. It's super incomplete. Even as someone who runs a site, it's really not that useful often. So first of all, I applaud anyone who does sort of go down that rabbit hole. But I guess, do you think there's a good reason? Like, why haven't we seen better, to your point, more like regular sort of consumer internet type products like in the clinical trial space? Like, as you've gotten your hands dirty over the last couple of years, is there anything that jumps out to you that makes it unique, or are we just simply, very more resistant to change maybe? Or I guess sort of I always like to hear sort of the more outside opinion, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't think it's for lack of trying. So when we embarked on this and we started looking at the space, I think what we saw was a lot of other folks, well-intentioned, have attempted to build a platform that makes it easier for patients. And what I would say was very hard about this problem wasn't, a design issue. It's like, if you look at Airbnb, right? It's not that the website design is like the hard problem. For us, the hard problem here was actually going from all of the crazy like information that's on clinicaltrials.gov, all the unstructured medical jargon that's on there, and translating it into a set of structured information that we could then present to patients in plain English. And actually doing that kind of like transcription from like all that craziness into structured database that you could then present to patients, I think was really the hard bit here. And then I'm seeing Richard make a comment here, which I think resonates, right? There is an element of this, which is how do you then go from data that's usable to something that's like truly intuitive, that patients can navigate, can understand, and that's a flow that makes sense to a patient. And I think, just investing in all of that product effort, and shout out to our product engineering and design teams here for really building a platform that is that's resonating for patients. Oh, and I've just got a bird join me for this live stream, so that's going to happen, I guess.
I mean, is that like a pet bird, or is this literally?
It would be pretty crazy if it was like a wild bird that just.
I was going to say, hey, you never know, man. I had to ask.
Yeah, no. I mean,
you should have pretended like it was a wild bird.
That would be a lot of fun. I think she can sense that there's something happening here, and she likes to be like a part of the attention. So this is Rosie.
Bring her on camera. I love it. Well, cool. I know we didn't get to talk much before. Did you? Are you wanting to demo at all today?
Yeah, I'm happy to do a little demo if that's what you want to jump into here.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I like to really try to take advantage of the visual element of the live stream. I do audio a lot as well, so I'd love to see it. I watched a little bit of your interview with Dan Sfera,
sure.
But I don't think you had an opportunity to walk through it there. So I'd love to get just a peek. Yeah,
totally. And have you managed to poke around on the website at all in the last 24 hours?
A little bit. I didn't get as far as I would like to have, but I have just a little.
Sure. And I'm seeing a shout out from Leston as well. Hey, Leston, how you doing? Let's see. Is this working? Share.
Yeah, you should have a present option at the bottom, and then it'll pop in, and I can throw it up on the screen.
Boom. All right. Let me know. You can see it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So the reason why I asked about the last 24 hours is because for those folks who have been following our journey for quite some time now, you might be familiar with our website. It's actually changed in the last 24 hours. So hopefully that's exciting for some of the folks that have met us already here. So why don't we jump in? So this is our homepage. You can see immediately it's more intuitive. It's like an easy way for patients to really start a search for a clinical trial. So let's imagine I'm searching for a lung cancer clinical trial. There's 975 lung cancer trials on the platform preloaded. And then immediately you're shown this, which is a list of all of the potential lung cancer trials, some information about them, and then some filters on the side that you can then use to narrow your search. So let's imagine, I'm in San Francisco. I am not interested in traveling more than 50 miles, and I am 55 years old. Great. So we're starting to narrow down the kinds of trials. We've got this, let's call it like a dynamic filter on the left-hand side based on what we think is going to help filter most specifically. So let's go down here. It's immediately suggesting, well, is this non-small cell? Do you know? Or is it small cell? Like, do you know? And if you don't know, then like, it's okay. You don't have to click anything. One of the things that's like really interesting is, as we all know, a lot of these oncology protocols are based on a line of therapy. That information is hidden somewhere in the eligibility criteria, hidden somewhere in like the unstructured information on clinicaltrials.gov or on about the trial. We're now pulling that information out and allowing patients to say, hey, like this is, I've had one prior treatment. So this is, we interpret second line therapy to one prior treatment. We've kind of done this translation for patients who are interested in or who know like what they're looking for. We also are starting to pull out biomarkers based on the descriptions of these trials. So what we find when we speak to patients is that a healthy amount of them actually do know some information about their diagnoses. They may not know exactly what the acronym means, but they do know that they see the same 4 letters over and over again. And their oncologist says the same 4 letters to them over and over again. So we're starting to pull some of this stuff out that helps patients really narrow down into what they're looking for. So this is, some of the information that we're able to start surfacing. If they're interested in potentially this trial, they can click in, see a summary of the trial, see some of the eligibility criteria for the trial, who's the sponsor, and sometimes we even have more information about a research site that's interesting. Okay, there's Kaiser Permanente, that's the nearest one in San Francisco. That makes sense, right? And if they're interested in learning more, they can hit read more details. This is information about the study, just a bunch of information that we're able to pull and structure and make it easier for patients to see. If they want to see what else is out there, which other locations are available, who knows, maybe I've got family in Albuquerque, and actually getting in touch with the Albuquerque site might be better for me as I think about my care options. So we help them navigate all of that. And if they then want to contact the researchers and really get in touch with the study, we take them through a pre-screening form. So I'm not going to fill a form with you on this stream, but basically we work with the sponsors, we work with the trial teams to design a form, a pre-screener, a digital pre-screener that makes a lot of sense here, and we're able to capture that information and present it back to the nearest site that the patient is trying to get in touch with.
Nice. So yeah, so already a bunch of questions come to my mind. So I guess, to what degree are you just pulling data from clinicaltrials.gov versus are you working directly with some sponsors? I know, if I go to clinicaltrials.gov, I know a lot of that data is inaccurate, it's incomplete. I may not really get a solid picture of whether or not I may be eligible. There may not even be contact information for a site on there. Sometimes that's the case as well. So are you able to sort of like supplement that information in any way? Are you dealing more directly with sponsors so that some studies may be more complete in terms of the data that's available?
Yeah, absolutely. So we think of the data problem as like layers on a cake, really. So the first layer is we're pulling all the information off of clinicaltrials.gov that we can. Sure. We're trying to create a patient-friendly education platform based on what's publicly available. So that's kind of the first layer. The second layer is we then will work with sites directly who are interested in creating a profile directly on our platform in order to meet patients who are nearby that might be eligible for some of their trials. We also have a registry that those sites can start to get access to see some of those patients. You can think of the registry as like an anonymous LinkedIn that they might want to, you might want to send a connection request to a patient. Following this the conversation with Dan, we're going to be working with Dan to get his sites active on the platform as well. And then the last layer is we might work with sponsors. So if we work with sponsors directly, then what we're able to do is, verify the information across all of their sites, across the entirety of the study, and make sure everything is up to date. To your point, all this stuff is constantly out of date. And as we work with sponsors and sites most directly, we're able to start to capture, bit by bit, a little bit more of the real-time truth about what's going on in a trial.
Sure. Yeah. And yeah, that's perfectly fair. And if you're cool, if you got anything else to demo, you're welcome to. If not, I'll just pull it off. And we got a ton of questions. We can start hitting.
Well, actually, I wanted to show you what the experience looks like on the site.
Yes, I would love, obviously, as a site owner, I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So, one of the things that came up, I think, in the LinkedIn group as we were prepping for this is, I think it was Eden, who asked, how do we then go from, this digital pre-screening information, the patient experience, through to the digital pre-screen, through to then passing the information off to the sites. So I wanted to show you this. This is what we call our site staff portal. This is what sites can get access to. And this is a demo environment. Don't worry about it. This isn't real patient data. This is all the appropriate caveats. But essentially, this is a platform on your end where you'll be able to see all the patients who've kind of connected with a study, the specific study for a specific site that you're working at. Cami is a member of our team, so we're going to use Cami as an example here. You can see that we have a qualification score presented. This is based on the pre-screening information. If you click in, you're able to see all the responses to the pre-screener. You'll be able to see some more information about the patient. And then interestingly, you can actually leave notes to your team or to the sponsor. So for example, I'm a CRC and I'm saying, hey, sponsor, don't worry, I'm on it. We've contacted the patient. And what this does, right, is it reduces all of the back and forth broken telephone that happens by email as we're trying to coordinate the enrollment journey for patients. Now you might be thinking, oh geez, like can the sponsor then see this information? Like is this like this is all PHI, like sponsors shouldn't be able to see that, and you'd be right. Sponsors have a view of this platform, but without any direct patient information. So we actually, like the sponsor view masks all the patient information. So instead of CAMI, it would be patient number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they'd still be able to see this note. And in that way, you can have a real conversation about the patient status without needing to go do broken telephone via email.
Yeah, there's certainly plenty of that as it is. No, I love that. I mean, you really created a place where everyone, I mean, all comers can come, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your site. Obviously, sites are going to be interested in this as an opportunity. Patients who are so, woefully sort of oftentimes unprepared to go through this process, and then obviously there's value for sponsors here as well. So I love that, and it's leveraging data that's ostensibly already out there in terms of clinicaltrials.gov. So it seems like it was just waiting for somebody to actually make it useful, right?
Hopefully, as you see this, it feels like an obvious answer. If it feels like an obvious answer, then from a design perspective, we've done a good job. I appreciate it. So yeah, we can pull this off now. I wanted to show you what the backend kind of looks like here, there's probably a little bit more here that we could demo. But if anybody has questions, we can jump back in.
Yeah, no, I mean that's certainly a great overview. And these things are not meant to necessarily be show all the bells and whistles, but to give people a little bit of a taste. I find it's often difficult to sometimes just see some of the products that are out there without being on a sales call, basically. So I just love that people are willing to share. I'm going to just jump in some questions here if you're okay with it.
Let's do it.
Interesting here. Does power of the ability for patients to find trials that will, cover travel expenses. And that way, they're not necessarily so limited by what's nearby. Is there a way that that's delineated in some way in Power?
Yeah, this is really interesting. So actually, we're working with a couple sponsors right now on how we want to surface this. And 100% we're able to communicate to patients what the travel and reimbursement program looks like for a trial. And actually, in particular, what it looks like on a site basis for the trial, because oftentimes, each site may elect to do it or not, right? And as a patient, you'd actually want to know, it says oh, this whole trial is doing this thing, but actually when it comes down to it, the site that you're trying to get in touch with doesn't have the program available. So we're trying to delineate it on a site basis for the trial.
Yeah, and even then, some sites may negotiate that more or less than others for subject compensation. Maybe local IRBs may not allow as much as someone who's using a central IRB. So yeah, having to account for all that certainly must be challenging, but I think it's probably, to your point, important. You don't want somebody getting the wrong information and stretching themselves out. So I love that. I love even trying to account for that, because I don't think it gets enough attention. And it's something that's it's important, and it can be the difference between participating in a trial or working with a particular site or not if you're a patient.
Absolutely. And imagine you're a patient, right? And there's
there's another couple good ones here. I love this sort of more Sorry, I think I lost you there for a second.
Oh, I was just saying imagine you're a patient and there's 2 or 3 sites that are kind of equidistant from you, right? And you're trying to figure out which one makes the most sense for you to kind of get in touch with based on your kind of logistical requirements. That data, today, you'd have to call each of the sites and then create a table,
right?
And try to piece it all together. It's really tough for patients today, and that's kind of our North Star. We want to make the patient experience as easy as possible, and our belief is that if we really create a patient-centric experience here, it'll be better for sites and it'll be better for sponsors.
Yeah, no, I mean, I cannot possibly agree more. Will Power give you prospective notifications about new similar trial opportunities that come up? Is it something sort of future matching?
Yeah, so actually we do this in 2 ways. So the first way is that patients sign up for notifications, exactly as you've kind of described there. Anytime there's an update to a study or a new study that's launched in the geography, new sites that are activated, we send an update to the patient based on what they've been searching for before. And the second way that we do this is, a healthy amount of patients sign up for our registry. And like I mentioned, the registry is an anonymous LinkedIn for researchers and for sites to go looking through and to send invitations to patients to kind of connect about the study. So if a patient signs up for the registry, then they can look forward to getting, connection requests from researchers about studies that might make sense.
Yeah, I mean, again, I love that. I think that's something that we've sorely lacked, and again, makes a lot of sense. It seems intuitive, but so much does, and we're not doing it. So, again, I love when again, the simpler it seems, I feel like the more likely it is to be successful. But here's an interesting question that I have I'm particularly interested in is, do they share study details of completed studies? I don't know, maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure, how many study results don't get reported or published, and certainly don't make their way back to clinicaltrials.gov. And even if it is there, it's not easy or friendly for patients to access. Are you guys sort of addressing that as well?
Oh yeah, in a few different ways. So the first way is, I'm sure you have seen the data that's been published back to ct.gov. They exist in these like really horrific tables that, unless you know exactly where to click, you don't find them anyways. But the first thing we're doing, especially for phase 3 trials, is looking for all the phase 2 readouts that we can that have been published through ct.gov, summarizing those tables and putting them into tables on the platform. So a patient can actually just kind of see what the prior data looked like if it's available. Then the second thing we're doing here, and this is a hard problem to solve, but I think it's a problem worth solving, is we're starting to scour the presentations at these conferences, AACR, ASCO, any publications, all this kind of stuff. And we're starting to try to pull out the most relevant pieces for a specific study. Because we know that when patients are doing their research, they kind of want to know this stuff too. They're going to go out and try to look for it. And if we can do it on their behalf and put it all into one place, we think that makes the patient experience 10 times better. So that's a really hard problem, but we're working on it.
Well, I mean, again, that's admirable. I mean, I love that. If you're not, it can be challenging if you're not affiliated with an academic institution. There was a time I worked in academia and I could get access to any journal, read any paper I wanted to. But since then, it can be challenging to go track that stuff down if you don't know real specifically where to look. And if you're, again, if you're a patient, you probably don't, and to no fault of your own. So just to be able to have even a starting point, I think would be a huge advantage. I mean, there's sort of two pieces of this, right? I mean, there's general awareness and education about clinical trials, which is a challenge by itself, and then the entry into specific trials. And I like that you're sort of attacking both ends of that, because they both need to be addressed, frankly.
Yeah, and you can think of this problem as having two layers to it. The first layer is like, can we even identify the right information? Like, can we pull it all into one place and just point patients to it, right? Like even just pointing them to the abstract or the poster would be huge, right? It would solve a massive problem. But then the second level of the problem is even harder, which is, can we do the synthesis for the patient and put it into plain English for them, so they don't have to then read the paper. There's kind of a couple levels to this, but we're excited to make progress on the first level and increasingly start to tackle the next level too.
Does there come a line where you're going to need like IRB approval for any of this like patient facing stuff, especially as you're interpreting it versus just providing it, I guess? Like, is that a concern that's come up at all, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've worked with a couple IRB advisors just to make sure we're doing this thoughtfully. And the feedback that we've heard is, as long as we're working with publicly available information and pulling together publicly available information for this patient education layer, that's all fair game, right? Like that's information that we can just do because it's a website and it's the internet, and it's good for patients. That's kind of the ethos, right? Like, is it good for patients, and does it cause potential patient harm? And the answer is A, it's good for patients, and B, there's no real harm in having information out there. Where the IRBs start to really get involved is as we partner with sites, we partner with sponsors, and we want to upload, more information, more context about the studies. So, for example, the travel information. How do we want to present that travel information? That tends to be a question for IRBs. Is there a media library that a study wants to supply information? So, for example, a study video. Is that information that that needs to be IR approved? Typically, yes.
Yeah, and I guess in fairness, I mean, a lot of that stuff has hit an IRB by the time, especially as sites see it. You know what I mean? So a lot of stuff's already been through IRB approval, unless they're generating something entirely new. But yeah, I guess I was curious more in the and you're not there yet, maybe, but as you start trying to synthesize all the different sources of information and make something that's in layman's terms, which I think again is sorely needed, but knowing that that's probably going to be another layer to go through is okay, need somebody to approve it. If a patient's going to read it and they're going to use it to make a decision as to whether or not to participate in a trial, does it become part of the consent process? It's not, but what I'm saying? It starts to get a little blurry. But again, I think it's work that needs to be done either way.
Yeah. Our commitment is, as we continue to build this platform, we'll work with our IRB advisors to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's safe for patients, while pushing the envelope a little bit on what has been done before, because we think that it's sorely needed to kind of challenge the status quo where we can.
I could not possibly agree more. Good question here. Obviously, when it's people over here with the platform and in terms of trying to make things easier for people without scientific backgrounds, even if you have a broadly scientific background, some stuff can be challenging to understand. I've been doing this a long time. I still come across things that I'm like, what now? What is this? I got to go I got to go down another rabbit hole of research to figure it out. But I guess talk to me about, monetization, or sort of how you guys are set up now. Like if I'm a site, what does that look like? Is, building a profile, or, what's sort of your business model for, let's start with just the site side.
Yeah. So on the site level, so we kind of think about this on two levels, and it wouldn't surprise you. There's kind of like a program for you as a site to have your profile and all this kind of stuff and access to the platform, and then there's a program for sponsors who want to run this across all their sites for a specific study. And we've kind of priced it in a way that makes sense on a site level, and makes sense as you scale across lots of different sites for a study. But essentially, the way that it kind of works is pretty straightforward. There's like a baseline component, which is just kind of like a nominal, almost license fee that's on a per site basis, and then we run a patient recruitment business that we work with sponsors on, and it doesn't look any different from another patient recruitment business, frankly.
Yeah, but I still think, as a site, especially, of course, forgive a somewhat narrow perspective I have, but there aren't a lot of, again, we're oftentimes just sort of the victim of central campaigns. We're just sort of okay, well, I guess this is what we're doing. We don't get to really choose or be involved in any way. So to me, anything that at least gives sites an opportunity to, potentially circumvent that process and bring it into their own hands is useful, and we don't see nearly enough of that. So it sounds like there's at least an opportunity for sites to set up and potentially have some control over their patient recruitment destiny, so to speak.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We launched kind of Power for Sites in February. I may be getting this wrong, and my team might.
I'm sure they'll hit you in the comments.
Yeah, they'll correct me in the comments. But we launched Power for Sites in February, and we've already had more than 400 sites kind of sign up of their own volition to start using the platform to connect with patients, right? And this is every kind of site. We've got teams at large medical, academic medical centers. We've got teams across professional research clinics, and then we've also got teams at community clinics who do research on the side, who've signed up to use the platform. And there's kind of this very user-centric ethos of the way that we've built this product. From the patient side, that's also translating into the site side as well. That I think is leading to a groundswell of interest here. If we make things easier for patients, we make things easier for sites. Eventually, we make things easier for sponsors as well.
Well, I mean, sometimes it is sorely missed that I feel like sites and patients are sort of in the same bucket. I know they're not. These patients obviously have their unique experience, but ultimately, the sites are there to guide a patient through their journey. Sort of
That's right.
on the ground, so to speak. So, I think uh, sites in many ways are sort of as connected to this as you could possibly be, but again, oftentimes don't get that decision making or even influence in the process. So anything that sort of brings it back down to the the people who are actually doing the stuff on the ground and
On the
guiding those
ground.
patients through makes it, again, I think is extremely important. I think again, anything that helps with that goal, I think is going to go a long way.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to make it easier for patients and sites to kind of do the work between each other that they need to do. And then we need to make the data collection and reporting back to sponsors like almost invisible and seamless. So they can have confidence that everything is going on according to plan, right? Like that's really what we need to do together as an ecosystem.
Yeah, that would be the ideal because it's very top down for now, and that's fine. That's obviously worked to some degree. Certainly not certainly not as well as any of us would hope, but I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift in people's ideals in that regard. And again, I think that'll only make things better.
Always room for improvement.
Yeah, no question about that. Well, so let me ask you this too. Then, I mean,
Sure.
it seems like there could be, you guys, guys have some investment. You got raised a nice round. It looks like. Do you have anything else sort of like forward looking? It seems like this could certainly address, potentially more issues down the road, not just necessarily a patient recruitment issue per se, or even patient awareness. Are you guys looking to build this out further, or just kind of focusing on your first thought here?
Yeah, how far into the future do we want to talk is really the question, right?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I'd be curious to hear as far out
All
as
the
you're
way out
willing to
there,
share.
all the
Right.
way out there, 30 years from now, what does this look
There you
like?
go.
No, like what I would say is that right now we are hyper focused on building a platform that patients can use to look for trials, that sites want to use, right? Like that's kind of like the key term that sites want to use to connect with patients, and that as a result, sponsors look forward to use because it's easy for them to get up and running and working with the sites and the patients to kind of bridge these connections, right? That's kind of like the immediate mission we're on right now. As we grow, right, there's a world of possibility that's out there. We actually just published our first kind of like analysis of data on our platform. We're calling it "Where Are All the Patients?" But essentially, we analyzed about 2,700 oncology profiles on our platform to identify, what are some of the trends in oncology patients? Where are they? What are they looking for? All this kind of stuff. And you can easily see that kind of analysis turning into feasibility study stuff, helping site networks who are expanding choose new locations to expand to, but then also helping sponsors who are trying to determine which sites that they want to partner with based on where there's the most like on the ground interest for research in these indications.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing, and I think again, sometimes overlooked is that people like me and with similar models, like we, if we know
Sure.
where the patients are, we will gladly spin up
Sure.
sites and make it accessible with in partnership with a sponsor. I mean, that makes perfect sense, right? And I've seen a little bit of that here and there, but I think again, it's sort of really underutilized. Like why, we're sort of doing it backwards, and why not, reverse engineer it? The patients are here. Let's go. We can spin up a site for not a lot of cost and really help people where they are, instead of saying like, well, here's the academic medical centers, go there.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are. And that we know that's not really holding up very well over time, right?
Yeah. And when we looked at the data, 50% of patients were near a top 20 AMC. That's not a surprise because these AMCs are in big cities.
Yeah.
More than 50% of patients weren't near a top 20 AMC. Then the question becomes, how do we engage with them? Where are they? How do we make sure that we're setting up sites and locations that these patients can access? And then, even those patients that are near the AMCs can't always get an appointment. Oftentimes they can't get an appointment. So how do we make sure that, that they're served despite, not being able to get access to the medical centers that are, supposedly nearby and accessible.
Well, and I have to imagine there's probably a lot of potential in terms of helping continue to diversify patient enrollment, right? I mean, if you have some demographics on these patients who are signing up, again, I feel like that could potentially help solve the not solve the issue, help address the issue of patient diversity, right? I mean, that's still a huge problem that we have.
Yeah, yeah, and actually, this is a piece of data that was really interesting when we did the analysis on the oncology patients on our platform. We found, actually, I'll ask, what would you think the U.S. Census says the percentage of non-white patients are, the percentage of non-white people are in the U.S.? Do you know that number off the top of your head by any chance?
I don't even know that I could venture an educated guess, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'd say, what, 40%?
Hey, you nailed it. It's about 40%.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So about 40% of people in the U.S. non-white, right? We know that non-white patients are anywhere between 2 and 8x underrepresented in clinical research. When we looked at the oncology patients on our platform, the profiles, we found that north of 50% of the patients who have signed up to use Power for oncology research are non-white. What does that mean? It means that we're actually overrepresented in the diverse population that has historically struggled to get access to clinical trials. And then the question is why? Like, why are we overrepresented? And I think, and this is now hypothesis territory, but I think it's because when you are traditionally excluded from the system, you're increasingly forced to go advocate for yourself. And when you're forced to go advocate for yourself, you find platforms like ours, which make it easier for you to learn about the potential research that could be helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's perfectly intuitive, right? I mean, these are people who want to find information. They're highly motivated. And to your point, they've been, maybe shut out from more traditional means and are taking it upon themselves to go find it. So again, to me, it's like, here it is. Let's go get it. Let's all come together on this, because that makes perfect sense. And I want to throw up a question I've seen, a couple different times, phrased in different ways. Hey, Michael Young, how you doing? How do patients find out and sort of get to Power? That's a question I've seen here a couple of times. I'll be honest, I'd seen you guys a little bit here and there. I wasn't quite sure. It took me a couple of times of seeing you to finally be like, okay, let me check this out. So I mean, how are you guys getting out? Just doing a lot of advertising, working with sponsors, I assume. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, you probably won't believe the answer, but I'll tell it to you anyways. About half of our patients find us on their own when they're looking for clinical trials. They just find us on the internet. They're looking, they're doing their own research, and our website shows up when they're.
You guys have good SEO.
We've got good SEO. Like, we show up when they're doing these like long tail esoteric kind of like questions that they're asking the internet. Actually, I don't know if you've used like Bing's new chat for AI. No. Well, a fun thing happened recently. We're playing with the AI and we're asking it, well, tell me about where can I get the best lung cancer clinical trials in I can't remember the city. And it had 3 sources. Source number 1 was the Mayo Clinic. Source number 2 and source number 3 were our website.
Nice.
So we're starting to get patients who are doing their own research. That's kind of the thesis here. That's about 50% of the people who come to our website. 25% of the people who come to our website come from direct or word of mouth referral traffic. So one of the things we're starting to see, and actually we're really proud of that number. It's a huge number.
Yeah.
One of the things we're starting to see is that once one patient uses our website and sees how easy it is and how intuitive it is, they'll go and they'll refer other patients. They'll drop a link to our website in their Facebook group. Actually, we had an MS patient come in a while ago who saw a link to us in their Facebook group, clicked in and started poking around and found a trial that was within I think a 50-mile drive, and they were previously considering flying out of country to get access to something like that. So that's another pathway. We're also seeing physicians are referring us. So you've probably had this experience where you've had to refer a patient to clinicaltrials.gov and you've had this sinking feeling in your stomach that it's going to go nowhere. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's like that weird thing. Like I feel like a jerk when I say it, but I don't even know. Or previously, I haven't known a better way. I'm like, check out clinicaltrials.gov. Sorry in advance. That's kind of
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's like I wish there was something else, right? But I guess this is what we're referring patients to. So physicians, once they've seen our platform, light bulb goes off. They say, "Well, I no longer have to feel guilty about sending patients, right, to a platform. I'm going to send them to Power." So about 25% of our traffic kind of like comes from there, and then the remaining quarter we do all the garden variety digital marketing that you would imagine.
It's interesting. You talk about word of mouth. I think that's sort of really undervalued. I don't know if it's just a clinical research thing or not, but I mean, we see it even at the site level all the time. If you provide a good experience, a lot of these people are super. I mean, they're tapped into other people who have the same disease states. They talk amongst themselves. They're looking for different care options. So for whatever reason, there seems to be very strong word of mouth in people who are seeking out clinical trials. It seems like to me anyway.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that's really interesting. You guys have
Oh
that
yeah.
fairly high, seemingly fairly high percentage.
Yeah. I mean, we all know this. There's the reason why we're all in this space is because um, there's a little bit of a inherent altruism, right? Like we want to do good. Um, it's no different for patients. Patients also share that. They want to help each other. They want to help other patients, especially patients who've overcome um, the situation or managed to navigate through the situation. They're looking for ways to give back and support others. And what we've built here is a platform that allows people to do so, to really just lean in and provide something of value to each other.
No, agreed. It's an interesting question
Yeah.
in terms of increase of MDs. I know this is something Dan kind of drilled down on a little bit too, and maybe related but slightly different. But sites potentially using this to find new trial opportunities. Even I think, kind of go back to your other point. I live in Oklahoma. We have a lot of heart disease. We have a lot of obesity. We have a lot of diabetes. We're not a very healthy state, but I would love to be able to even better serve these populations by finding and bringing more study opportunities, which, historically a lot of sites have used clinicaltrials.gov to sort of try to find study
Sure.
opportunities. So are you seeing, MDs or even sites get or try to take that angle in any way? And if so, is that something you guys are in any way addressing, or is it just sort of maybe a byproduct of the system?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think actually I saw it in our customer support email, um, like email list recently. A couple of sites who've reached out about studies and trying to get in touch with the sponsors. Had to tell them that we don't currently do that.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, our current focus is really on bridging the patient and site like experience to make recruitment smoother. But in the fullness of time, you asked about 25 years from now, like who knows, right? Like if we have site selection data and feasibility data that's really helpful from a sponsor perspective, is it also helpful bidirectionally the other way, right? Potentially.
And that was, I mean, it was sort of a maybe a hidden question, but I mean, I could see that, like, right, if you've got all these stakeholders on a platform, like you could turn it into something more broad in terms of feasibility data, uh, site selection data, and stuff like that. I know, again, maybe that's down the road, but certainly seems like it could be something intuitive.
Yeah.
And I think an interesting look. Let's be really honest. If there were a platform that's like Power and it made patient recruitment easier, I mean, more people are going to want to participate in research. Frankly,
Hmm.
a lot of MDs don't, because it's a pain in the ass. It's hard.
Hmm.
Don't find good patients. Not to say they're bad patients, but you don't find patients who meet the criteria, and it's challenging, right?
That's hard.
So, you know, I think ultimately, though, if this is something that addresses that in an efficient way, I mean, you're gonna just sort of, as a byproduct, see physicians who are like, okay, this nut's been cracked a little bit, so it becomes a little bit more of an attractive option for them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like at the very like bottom of all of this like work that we're doing, What we want to see is we want to see a more efficient system for doing medical research, for pursuing innovation in the life sciences, right? Anything that's, on that path, if we think that we can do uniquely well because the sites have bought in, the patients have bought in, or the sponsors have bought in, we'd be interested in pursuing that. But today, small company that we are, early as we are, we have to focus. Focus is the name of the game. So we're gonna focus on what we have going right now that we think we can do really well, and then, hey, you will be the first to know once we have that capability. Well, Dan might have actually staked the claim in that idea.
That's right.
But
we talk a lot, so we'll probably find out around the same time.
you'll both be the first to know once we're ready to start helping you with it. How about that?
And to be honest, I mean, if you are able to do just that, bring patients, sites, and sponsors together, I mean, frankly, the sky's the limit, because that's what we really sorely lack, is everything is still so siloed or not inclusive enough of all three of the sort of major stakeholders, so to speak. So if you can accomplish that through whatever means, again, I think the potential is going to be insane.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. Like we think about it as like this triangle, right? Of like site sponsors, and patients, and each edge of the triangle represents a different set of activities that needs to happen and needs to be coordinated in order to make a study go smoothly, for recruitment to go smoothly. We want to be a platform that enables all of that to happen in real time, collaboratively and transparently. We actually wrote, like the name of this live stream is a modern clinical trial marketplace. We wrote kind of like a thesis on what is a modern clinical trial marketplace, and in our minds, it's actually this three-sided platform that allows these three stakeholders to engage with each other in a way that's incredibly efficient, collaborative, transparent. And now I'm repeating myself, but that's the vision. That's what we believe in. We need to build this platform that allows these three groups in order to collaborate.
Yeah, no, I love it. Guys, if you have any more questions, get them in here over the last couple of minutes. Brandon, anything else before we kind of wrap up here? I feel like we pretty well covered it, but anything we missed along the way?
Yeah, I mean, can I make some shameless plugs? Is that kosher?
No,
yeah, that's cool.
Go nuts.
All right, cool. So shameless plugs. I got 3 for you. The first is our LinkedIn. Building a LinkedIn following. Please go head over, find us, like us, share our content, whatnot. Second one is we're doing something kind of kooky. Started a newsletter 2 weeks ago. The target audience of the newsletter is clinical research professionals who want to challenge the status quo and laugh a little bit while they do it. We're calling the newsletter Clin Oops.
Nice.
It's a fun take on some of the challenges that we're facing in clinical operations, but hopefully with a little bit of humor. So you can find that at clinoops.substack.com. And then the third plug is we're doing. You've inspired us, Brad. We're going to start doing a weekly LinkedIn live stream where we answer questions about the platform. If anybody wants to just ask about how things are going and where the product is going, talk about the roadmap, talk about any of that kind of stuff. We're going to be hanging out weekly. 2 weeks from now is the first one. Feel free to join in, and we'll use it as an opportunity to just engage with folks that want to learn more about what we're up to.
Nice. I will be there. Is this right? I spelled it correctly?
You got it.
Beautiful. I will be checking that out for sure. I'll make sure we link up your. You guys will. If you're watching this, you're probably on LinkedIn anyway. So make sure and go check out Power. Check out Brandon and keep an eye out for their live stream. It looks like we got some people posting up those links in the comments. So beautiful, guys. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Brandon, man, I appreciate you coming on. I'd love to have you back here, and as you guys progress, and I'll probably probably sneak in on your guys' live stream here and there and bother you occasionally. So
yeah. Well, Brad, hey, it was great to meet you. Finally, it feels like it's been long overdue. Looking forward to staying in touch here, and as we continue to build this platform, I'd love to get your feedback. Make sure that we're doing everything we can to make your life easier as a site owner.
You'll get it whether you like it or not. So don't worry.
Love it.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. And you guys check out Power. It's withpower.com.
It's withpower.com.
Beautiful. All right, guys, check it out, and we will see you next time.